we had Pakistan together with Qatar mediating between Iran and the United States in Switzerland. And the region, yesterday we had Iranian foreign president going to Pakistan talking about a new security architecture for the region. It's about Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Qatar, Pakistan all coming together. Do you think that just remember just the tremendous change since the war, before October the 7th. I think October the 7th going to remain in the history as the total change of the mindset of the governments in the region toward Israel. We had Abraham Accords, normalization between Israel and Turkey and Saudi Arabia. You see, that's not the case anymore, even under the Trump administration. And the region is trying to redefine itself, reshape itself, to adapt, to somehow to get accustomed with the new reality of the Strait of Hormuz. Because Saudi Arabia, it doesn't mean that Saudi Arabia is going to be a vassal of Iran or Iran wants to dominate them. It's about a new security architecture for the region. They're coming together and talking to each other, which wasn't the case before. What is your understanding of that?
Well, again, we have to look at this over time. The Carter Doctrine, which was, invoked in the late 1970s after the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, basically, was a deal with the devil for the Gulf Arab states, where they guaranteed America's access and ability to control global energy supplies, especially Saudi Arabia, over developing Saudi oil fields so that they could overproduce oil on demand. If the United States needed more oil, they could underproduce to help control the market. In exchange, the United States guaranteed security, and everything about our relationship there. I mean, when the Central Command, which is the main combat command responsible for the region, has more influence than the U.S. ambassador, it tells you what the priorities is. It's always been about security. And the way we framed, the Shia crescent, so we have to create the Sunni counterpart to contain Iranian expansionism. We've been selling them integrated air defense systems networks. We've talked about, how we're going to provide the same equipment, and then it's all going to be integrated into a singular shield that's going to repel, Iran's missiles. And then the might of America's back there ready to charge in and save you. The American cavalry is on the way. But it turned out that none of the missile systems worked as advertised. Everything was a lie. Everything was a fraud. And the cavalry is actually the 7th Cavalry, commanded by General Custer after the little Battle of Little Bighorn. It means the general's dead and the cavalry's slaughtered and there ain't nobody coming. And the Gulf Arab states recognize this. They recognize this reality. And so does everybody else. Everybody else who was dependent on the notion of American hegemony, a notion of American military supremacy being sustainable over time. It's now been exposed as a lie. And so they're adjusting to this new reality. You're right. It's not that Saudi Arabia and the Gulf Arab states are going to kneel before Iran. Iran doesn't want that either. What's going to happen, though, is that they're going to recognize that they aren't going to let outside powers like the United States create a black and white us versus them reality. That the reality is that everybody has to live together. The Strait of Hormuz proved this. It's a common, choke point that the oil has to go through. Iran has said we can control this at any time we want to. What needs to happen is the new security framework comes into where everybody's security is linked. Therefore, there's no necessity for Iran to shut it off. But the only way that happens is if you remove the most destabilizing force in the region, which is the United States.
Donald Trump tried to use Syria against Lebanon. He said Benjamin Netanyahu needs to learn from Syria. They can do something against. And then we had this Syrian, I don't know if you can call it president, but the guy Al-Jolani came out and said, I'm not going to attack Lebanon. What's in it for me? And we don't need to do that. And with the case of Lebanon, we have to talk with all parties in Lebanon. We have to talk with Hezbollah, with the government. And what was so strange yesterday, we've seen that the president of Lebanon coming out and said, no, there is no way to have any sort of peace if Israel doesn't withdraw totally from Lebanon. The guy, you know, the guy is totally connected with the West, with the United States, and he comes out talking this way. What is the sign that you get from these sort of arguments?
Again, the U.S. lost a war. Why can't people understand this? We didn't win. And yet, we're trying to dictate terms of surrender to people who won the war. And I think you now have, just as the Gulf Arab states, it's not as though the Gulf Arab states are enamored with Iran. They're not at all. But they understand the realities. You have a Lebanese president who does not like Hezbollah. And you can go back and hear, the rhetoric he used about, the need for Hezbollah to dismantle itself and the Lebanese armed forces are going to fill the vacuum. But now he's confronted with the fact that Israel is a rogue power that's out to annihilate Lebanon no matter what. And the United States is incapable of agreeing to anything. And so he's, he has to deal with the reality. Hezbollah exists. The reality of Hezbollah is that, Hezbollah represents the notion of, Lebanese sovereignty mattering more than Israeli security, or at least managing as much as Israeli security. And this is a reality now that the Lebanese president has to take in place. He humiliated himself, with Thomas Barak and Israel meeting together to, negotiate, a peace settlement that was just lopsided, one-sided. He humiliated himself. He showed that he doesn't care about Lebanese sovereignty. In reality, he doesn't. The Lebanese people see this because Israel bombs Beirut, and this pathetic character, for a while was continuing to blame Iran and blame Hezbollah, never blaming Israel or the United States. The current posture that he's put out there is a reflection of reality. That Israel has to leave Lebanon. That's the bottom line. That's how this issue is resolved. Israel must leave Lebanon. And again, I just want to remind your audience, because there might be people out there who somehow forgotten history. Hezbollah beat Israel before. In 2000, Israel had to leave Lebanon because they lost against Hezbollah. Israel's losing today against Hezbollah. Go look at the battlefield. They're not doing well. And Israel will leave Lebanon again because they've lost. They can't sustain this. And I think the Lebanese president is also starting to understand this new reality. Again, there is no 7th Cavalry charging up over the hill to rescue Lebanon. 7th Cavalry is Little Bighorn dead. Custer's dead. No trumpets are going to sound. And I think there's now this recognition that there has to be a new world, a new order, and Hezbollah is a reality. The best way to disarm Hezbollah is to liberate all of Lebanese territory. Then Hezbollah loses its legitimacy. Hezbollah as a militia only exists because Israel has failed to evacuate Lebanon. When Israel evacuates the totality of Lebanon, this includes the Sheva farms, which were the heart of the previous disputes. Then Hezbollah, because they're now not just a militia movement, but a political party of some renown in Lebanon. The political party will have to recognize that the time of the militia is over, and that Hezbollah will either disband or be absorbed by the Lebanese army and operate, on behalf of Lebanon in its totality. That's the path forward.
Yeah. I think if Israel withdraws totally from Lebanon, I think that's the path for Lebanon. And but without, yeah, without
no other path. But it can only happen. I mean, Netanyahu has to go. The bottom line is that this man has created so many problems for Israel and the region. And I think his time has come close. You said earlier that he's a genius, and he has, of course, shown a tremendous political genius for staying in power. But he's not going to survive much longer. I mean, his mortality is upon him. But I think that there's a better chance of him being ousted, arrested, tried, and imprisoned than there are of him dying in office or whatever form of cancer has infested his body.
I think he has never thought that his main objective all for 4 decades, which was the war against Iran, would be the destroyer of his, sort of position in Israel, because he wanted to be, as a great part of Israeli history. He wants to be that man that saved Israel, improved Israel. Those days are gone.
It's over. And Donald Trump is looking at what's happening to Bibi Netanyahu and understanding that this man who fought so long to have this legacy of Israel's savior is going to go down as one of the most hated characters in Israeli politics ever. Convicted as a criminal. And Donald Trump understands that that's his fate too, if he doesn't change. It's his fate no matter what. I don't think Donald Trump ends well. This man is too corrupt, too bad of a leader. He's treated America so poorly. He's going to survive for another 2 years, but he's not going to survive what happens to him after 2028. And basically, his fate is going to be that of Bibi Netanyahu. He's going to be hunted down, he's criminalized, and his entire legacy, stained by the sins that he's committed.
Yeah. We have a new report. I think with Reuters comes out and reports on what UN reported about the genocide in Gaza. It seems you see the shift even in the mainstream media, and everything is turning on, Benjamin Netanyahu and Israelis because they want to put them in some sort of restrictions. Do you think that's the same if they withdraw from Lebanon? Let's assume that happens. Let's go 100% positive and optimistic about that. But do you think that are they going to receive pressure from Turkey to withdraw totally from Syria?
Israel?
Yeah.
Greater Israel's over. The Greater Israeli experiment's over. Israel will retreat to the borders of Israel, and those borders will be altered to reflect a new reality called the State of Palestine. This is Netanyahu lost. Ben Gvir lost. They all lost. It's going to take some time for the defeat to totally manifest itself. But at the end of the day, Israel, there will be no greater Israel. Israel will retreat to whatever borders it has, and then it will just struggle for survival. It comes down to the economy. Israel is currently economically unsustainable, and if Israel can't turn that around and bring in some sort of economic growth, but that growth can only happen with stability, and that stability only can come when Israel has normalized relations with the world. And today, the world condemns Israel as a genocidal state. So, pressure would put on Israel. There won't be an Israeli presence in Syria. The Golan Heights will be evacuated, and Gaza will become Palestine.
Scott, you've been to Russia in the last 3 weeks. You were there and talking with them and feeling Russia from inside. How do they find the situation in the West Asia? And how do they see the new security structure? And how is that going to be beneficial for the position of Russia and China, maybe?
Well, first of all, there isn't any security architecture today.
No.
The architecture that existed was an American-dominated one. The Russians don't trust the United States at all. Zero trust. Not just in terms of how America's treated Russia, but they don't trust them in regards to Iran as well. And so there's just a lot of flux and uncertainty. And what you see is Russia and China working with Iran to create a new reality outside the span of control of the United States. The United States has made itself diplomatically irrelevant and militarily impotent. And what's left? The hot air of Donald Trump. Russia doesn't care anymore. I mean, at one time they did. The concept of the Anchorage, the spirit of Anchorage was real, resonated at the highest levels. Today, you have the president say he was deceived by Donald Trump. You have Lavrov say that it's dead. And that's the reality. So, you can't have the Russians saying that about the United States in terms of how the U.S. treats Russia, and suddenly the Russians going, but we can believe the United States and Iran. The United States is a credible voice, and the United States has never been a credible voice in Iran. Barack Obama, when he was talking about the JCPOA in April of 2015, 3 months before the JCPOA came into force, was telling NPR that the United States would not see the JCPOA to fruition if the sunset clauses ever came to the point where they were going to, end. That the United States never envisioned a time when Iran would be able to have unlimited enrichment, unlimited nuclear power. That the JCPOA was a lie, a straight up lie. The Iranians knew it when they signed it, but it was proven to be. That's why Donald Trump pulling out of the JCPOA was the most honest thing an American president's ever done, because he pretty much said, "Yeah, we're not doing this." But now we're in a situation where he's lying about them. Come on, guys. one of the main things about this current memorandum of understanding is that nations will not threaten each other, will not threaten, use force to coerce things. And all Donald Trump does is threaten people. So no, they're in Russia. They've lost faith in the United States, and it's tough as an American to be there because you want to say, hey, there's hope that the American people, but it's how many times can you tell them that just wait for the American people to get their act together? When the fact is the American people right now appear incapable of getting their act together. I mean, we continue to buy into the lies of what's going on in Russia, the Russophobia. We continue to tolerate the support to Ukraine. I mean, what more does Zelensky have to do than pull up the body of Andrei Melnik, a mass murdering, genocidal, Jew-hating well, he wasn't a Banderas, he was Melnik, but member of the organization Ukrainian Nationalists, and then bring his body, bury him in full military honors, and rename units in honor of Melnik, a murderous Nazi bastard thug. And the American people are like, that's okay. It's just a thing. No, it's not. It's what Ukraine is. They're not a democracy. It's a brutal dictatorship that's, whose only ability to rally support is to rally behind the same ideology of Nazi Germany. Come on, America, where's your pride? Don't you remember going to war against the Nazis? D-Day? Don't you remember anything? Or have you forgotten it all? Or did you never know
it? I think considering the diplomacy, the Trump administration was a huge catastrophe. Because look at what is going on between Russia and the United States, between Iran and the United States. They're basically talking with two guys. None of them is diplomat. None of them knows what is the real, problem. For example, in Ukraine, in the West Asia, basically they're supporting Israeli position. They're supporting, and you see, finally, is there any sort of discussions in Russia about when we have someone like Lavrov, who knows what is diplomacy, and we have to negotiate with Kirill Dmitriev, for example. This is not the problem on the part of Russians. This is the problem coming from the United States because they sent two guys who don't know anything about, they have no idea about what is diplomacy, how does it work, and they even look at the meetings they had. They don't take notes even what is happening. What is the main they just talk, and their understanding going to be transferred to Donald Trump. This is the whole, and these guys are serious. Is there anybody in Russia talking about these sort of flaws, problems with the United States?
Of course, but they don't talk about Witkoff and Kushner because they just don't matter. You're talking about two people that just don't matter. The only person that cares about Witkoff and Kushner is Kirill Dmitriev. Who even now is starting to change his posture a little bit, but he's still pie in the sky about how business, the economy can somehow turn U.S.-Russian relations around. But Vladimir Putin, his boss, has basically said that Donald Trump deceived him. So the wool is off the eyes, so to speak. Lavrov has said that the spirit of Anchorage is dead. Dmitry Ushakov, the advisor, same thing. The concept of stable U.S.-Russian relations is always premised on the notion that the war in Ukraine could be brought to a negotiated settlement where American economic engagement with Russia served as some sort of a security guarantee. But Lavrov just said that this is going to be decided on the battlefield, not on the negotiating table. So the window of opportunity for the United States is closed. Donald Trump at the G7 meeting let through his colors. Going to provide long-range strike weapons to Ukraine so they can strike Moscow. That's not what you say if you want to be friends. He's going to strangle the Russian economy by going after Russian energy. That's not what you say if you want to be friends. Russia knows the truth. Russia knows the enemy. Russia knows who the enemy is. They'll continue to talk to Kushner and Witkoff because talking's better than not talking, because it creates the potential for something to happen. Doesn't mean that something will happen, but at least there's potential because there's talking. Under Biden, there was no talking whatsoever. That's a very dangerous situation. So even if you don't get what you want, the fact is that they're engaging. These guys who don't take notes might come back and whisper something to Donald Trump. That's communication. And Trump does pick up the phone and talk to Putin on occasion. And you notice every time that he does talk to Putin, Trump has a temporary moment of sanity where, reality kicks in. But Sergei Lavrov just said, nuclear weapons are on the table. He ain't bluffing. This is the feeling in Russia right now. I mean, Vladimir Putin made it clear at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum that his priority was economic stability and economic growth. That he's not going to let the war in Iran, in Ukraine, um, you know, define the future of Russia. But if all the West wants is war, then that's what they'll get. And now Vladimir Putin has told the Russian army to be prepared to go to war against the West. And this is a major shift, and you see the Russian people starting to shift with them. I spent a lot of time in the Donbass and Zaporizhia, investigating drone warfare and things of that nature. The propaganda that we're being fed on social media through X. I mean, Elon Musk has done an algorithm that just gives pro-Ukrainian bloggers the ability to flood the airwave, and anti-Russian bloggers and anti-Iranian pro-Israeli bloggers. And so the average person coming on the feed, just scrolling through, they're going to be inundated with crap, absolute lies, bunk, just garbage. But because they're not going to go to Russia and see for themselves. Moscow got hit. 500 drones came in. About 8 leaked through. The same day, the people of Moscow were living their lives. Zero impact on them. It was a little inconvenience. You had one or two guys go, "Oh my God, we got black rain falling on us," and then BBC turns that into a headline that as if Moscow is awash in black mud. No, Moscow is awash in people living their lives fairly well, by the way. Is there economic difficulties brought on by this? Yes, the price of gas temporarily went up a couple of rubles, inconveniencing people who live the country club lifestyle. But the price will go down. In Zaporizhia, electricity is out in the city, water is out in the city. But this isn't the first time these people have done this. People tend to forget that you're dealing with people who have been at war now for over 12 years. They know what war is, and there's no quitting these people. The people of the Donbass, I'm wearing their shirt, built under fire. I mean, that's their thing. We're built under fire. You think you can defeat us? We've been built in the forge of fire. 12 years. People who were kids in 2014 are adults today, and all they know is war. And they're not going to surrender to the Ukrainians because they know the Ukrainians better than anybody. They know the hateful ideology of the nationalists. So Russia's in it to win. Russia's not being, hurt to the point of, collapsing to their knees. They took 27 million casualties against the Nazis in World War II, lost entire cities and entire regions, and they still emerged victorious. Vladimir Putin said, we haven't even begun to engage with our full potential. And by the way, they're winning. People tend to forget that. We look at the video of an oil tank blowing up and the lid flipping through the air and go, oh my God, Russia's losing the war. No. Let's look at the battlefield. Let's look at Konstantinovka, which is falling. They're rolling up on Slavyansk. The Kramatorsk will fall by the end of the summer. The Donbass will be totally liberated. Zaporizhia, that front can't survive if the Donbass, if the urban, belt falls. Russia's winning on the battlefield. It's a hard fight. That's the other thing that became apparent. I mean, you won't find a single Russian soldier who goes, "Yeah, those Ukrainians, they run like dogs. We got them on the run." They all go, "No, they fight hard." I mean, this is a hard fight. And the drones, it's tough. I was hunted down a couple times by Ukrainian drones. Sort of interesting. But I got out of there. I mean, but these people are living it today. They their gas stations are blown up, their gas tankers are blown up, their cars are blown up, their trucks are blown up. Okay, they're still there and they're still fighting, and they ain't going to quit ever. And Ukraine is collapsing. People just don't talk about it. There's this huge propaganda program going on that's built around the drones, but nobody talks about what's happening underneath there. The Ukrainian economy is not a functioning economy. It can only function if it's totally funded by outside resources, and that's why Zelensky's running around telling lies about the great victories that he's doing. Long-range sanctions, he calls the drone attacks. They're not having a meaningful impact. They have some impact, there's no doubt about that, but they're not having an existential impact on Russia's ability to survive as a nation or continue this war. And the other thing that I've seen while I was in Russia is that for every problem, there's a solution. And anybody who thinks that this Ukrainian drone advantage is going to last much longer, you don't know the Russians. I do know the Russians, and I know a little bit about what the Russians are doing in response to this. And you're going to see sometime soon things happen. And, I can't predict the future. I certainly don't make policy for Russians, but I will say this. Starlink has been identified as one of the major problems faced by Russia today, and there are several solutions out there, none of which are good for Elon Musk and Starlink's future. Live by the sword, you die by the sword. And if Elon Musk wants to weaponize Starlink, then Starlink will be treated as a weapon by Russia, and then the world will pay the consequences for that. Because when you take out something like Starlink physically, it has a cascading effect. And so the world needs to understand that there will be repercussions in global telecommunications because of the West's gleeful embrace of Ukraine's murdering of Russian civilians, which is all that's happening here. They're not having a meaningful impact on the military. The war is bloody. There's no doubt about that. But these long-range sanctions that Zelensky is so proud of are just killing innocent Russian civilians.
I think Starlink is a huge, because when they're talking about AI, we know what is the impact of AI. I think Starlink is huge, the impact it possesses. And because the war, with the case of Iran, we've seen how the Starlink was used to destroy, to manipulate the society, to bring the people out, to manage the total riots in Iran. With the case of Russia, they're using that. It was supposed to be used in some sort of, because are they going to redefine, or they're going to put some sort of security concerns to, somehow restrict the way that Starlink would work? Because Russia has the capability to hit the targets. Many people know that. And is that going to be that?
Russia is one of the most responsible nations in the world today, and they believe in international law. But Russia's not going to sit there and take punches all the time. Elon Musk right now acts as if he can do anything he wants. I've seen two approaches to the Russian response to Starlink. Both of them would be fatal to Starlink. Fatal to Starlink. Fatal to Starlink. The Russians don't want to do this because there are repercussions. I mean, it'd be devastating for global telecommunications, including Russian telecommunications. But Russia's not going to sit there and let Elon Musk do this. So Elon, if you're watching, stop it, end it. Eric Schmidt, stop funding the Hornets. I take it personally. When two Hornets come after me, I'm going to hunt you down, Eric Schmidt, and we're going to meet in a bar, and I'm going to buy you a beer, and then I'm going to punch your face in because you tried to kill me. You tried to kill me. I'm an American citizen. I wasn't embedded with the military. You came after me because I was in a civilian car driving on a highway. And because you didn't get me, that means you were going after some other Russians, civilians, driving on a highway. You're a murdering sack of crap. That's the reality. And the American people have to wake up for this. I mean, stop buying Google stock, collapse the Google economy, because they're murderers. They're murdering children. They're committing crimes. They're violating American law. It's against the law to provide material support for terrorism. And what the Ukrainians are doing against the Russian people is an act of terrorism, straight up. Starlink helped the drones that struck Starbells College, murdering 21 sleeping students. Starlink. The antenna is right there. This D2C technology that they're using now for the long-range drones, that's Starlink's, wonder thing. Oh, it's great. It helped people communicate around the world. It's going to all end, Elon, because that little constellation of satellites up there that allow you to link in and then shoot the laser beam down and communicate with satellites that you're now using to communicate with drones to bypass security. We know what you're doing, Elon. It ain't a secret, you bastard. And it's going to end. It's going to end violently. All the investment you've made is going to go away unless you stop.
Scott, if some escalations happen between Russia and Europe, what would be the reaction from the Trump administration? How do you see that influencing? Because right now they're producing a lot of drones for Ukrainians. And you said what is the outcome of those drones, because they're using those drones against civilians in Russia.
Russia's patience is not infinite. I mean, Vladimir Putin has made a point not to allow this war to define Russia's future. One of the things that I learned being in Russia, I gave a presentation at St. Petersburg International Economic Forum that caused a little bit of a controversy because I compared Europe to being a rabid dog, and I quoted To Kill a Mockingbird and Atticus Finch, a law-abiding lawyer who believed in the rule of law, taking a gun and shooting the dog, because sometimes the only solution is to shoot the dog. And Europe is a rabid dog. The only solution is for Russia to shoot it at this point in time. I firmly believe that. But Vladimir Putin has to, ask the question, what then? What next? And if the answer doesn't improve Russia's strategic position, but worsens it, maybe shooting the dog isn't the solution at this time. And so far, Vladimir Putin's made the decision that going to war against Europe or escalating is bad because, again, I want to remind everybody, Russia is winning. Understand, the goal of the West is to collapse Russia and bring it into Vladimir Putin's reign of governance, 26-year reign of success in Russia. One of the backers of that was Keir Starmer. He's gone. Merz, he's on the way out. Macron, history. And so from the Russian perspective, all these people that want to collapse Putin are disappearing themselves. Their economies are collapsing. All this talk about war. Germany can publish all the white papers at once about the need to go to war against 2029. And Russia, of course, the need to go to war against Russia in 2029. But from the Russian perspective, they look at it and they say, but can they do it? It's very easy to write a paper, but can you turn that into meaningful action on the ground? The answer is no. To get to where the Germans are today, 138,000 people, I think, in the military. They're talking about mobilizing over 450,000. Where are they going to get that? Ain't no volunteers coming forward. You ain't. And if you try to bring back the conscription, you're going to have complete social anarchy in Germany, collapse. So Germany is, understand that over 60% of the population, when polled, said they would not come to the defense of Germany, even if Germany was invaded. There is no German patriotism anymore. It's gone. The myth of the German economy has collapsed. German trains don't run on time anymore. This is the reality. Germany is defeating itself. So
exactly,
when you look at these drones that are hitting, they're a political embarrassment. There's no doubt about that. Russia would prefer that they didn't hit. But from a military standpoint, they aren't changing the outcome on the battlefield, and they're not having an existential level impact on Russia's survivability. So Vladimir Putin has big enough shoulders to go, we'll just absorb this right now because the problem is solving itself. We don't need to attack Europe. Europe is attacking itself. The dog is being shot, but it's Europe pulling the trigger, not Russia.